back to False Dichotomies. I'm Cy Castells.
I'm Daria Quinn.
This is our first time back in the recording seats since we've each had some significant life events, and we had to take a break from recording for a little while because of them.
I had an infected kidney stone and sepsis. So I was in a hospital for a week on IV treatments and whatnot, and they put me in a catheter and a stent, and so yeah, I was fortunate enough that family and friends were able to come and see me, including Cy.
Yep.
I had a real good conversation with my dad about my gender. I was really able to get some answers about what he knew as far as what the doctors had told him about hypospadias and what they felt they needed to correct. Mm-hmm. So I have a better understanding of what my parents knew and what they didn't. It was clear that the doctors did not disclose to them the full nature of the condition. And
for people listening along, this is kind of a continuation of a discussion that we had in the first part of the Dar Williams episode, where you disclosed some details about your medical past. It was really nerve-wracking for me to know that you were in the hospital and that you weren't doing well, and but I'm glad you're out. I'm glad you're doing better. I know you learned. I'm glad you learned a little bit more about yourself and your history, your family. I also, around the same time,
I think it was about a week. There was like the week before was yours, and then I went to the hospital the next week.
So I broke up with my girlfriend, and it's the same girlfriend I've been referring to in a couple of our past episodes. It's one of those things where for a very long time we had been knowing that we had problems, but we were both committed to sticking it out and trying to resolve those problems, and it got to a point where the problems weren't getting resolved, and it didn't seem like we were making any headway. And eventually I realized that actually, as of a few days ago, that was a month ago, which means, wow, we haven't recorded in quite a while. But also I'm feeling a whole lot more steady on my feet and more optimistic about the future, making plans to move actually to Canton, which would mean that I don't have to drive an hour to get here. In fact, I might even be able to walk. So that's great. So today is a very special episode because this is our Halloween special.
Yay!
And we're going to be looking at The Nightmare Before Christmas. If I remember correctly, this was the first time you ever saw it?
Yes, I would not have ever seen this movie had you not suggested it. Kind of give you a background. I had known this movie existed since it first was released.
Kind of hard not to.
And yeah, it was a relatively big deal, and it over the years has been merchandised to the point of near omnipresence.
Oh yeah.
To the point where it was like whatever mild interest I may have ever had in watching this movie was quashed by the oversaturation of merchandising. It's like you knew who the Hot Topic kids were because they had all the Nightmare stuff. And, this time of year, it serves as both a Halloween and a Christmas movie.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, it's one of those movies the fandom will be out for 3 months.
And actually, since there are visual references to several other holidays, you could argue that it's a Thanksgiving movie and an Easter movie. The Easter Bunny does make an appearance. But yeah, I could definitely see being overexposed. I've heard a lot of similar reactions to another favorite item of pop culture of mine, and that is Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Before there even were Harry Potter movies, back when there were only 3 books out, I was hesitant to read it because it was so goddamn popular.
Yeah.
And it's like people didn't even know that children might like reading.
Yeah. Well, there is a theory that has been posited by social media that children's love of reading is generally killed by English curriculums in high schools.
Yeah.
And the fact that they want us to read the Canterbury Tales.
It's not just that. It's about being told to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that Hermione in the books actually observed. If you want a kid to want to do something, all you have to do is tell them not to do it.
Yeah.
And the reverse is also true. If you want a kid to stop enjoying something, you gotta make it into an assignment.
It's like I remember being maybe the only kid in my English class that had any interest in Shakespeare and any interest in Great Expectations.
Mm.
And Great Expectations I actually connected to because I felt sort of a connection to Pip.
I could see that.
In the sense that, you want to make something of your life, but you don't have the means to. You kind of get sucked into an old woman's revenge plot.
I think also, like, we're always like, and I actually, Great Expectations was one of the many audiobooks that my mother had us listen to on long road trips. Mm-hmm. And what always fascinated me about that story was, like, everybody thought that Pip was getting a good deal out of this.
And he wasn't.
His life was nominally better. His quality of life was nominally better, but he didn't have any freedom. He had all of these expectations, like the title says, that, like, and it seemed like they thought it was an honor to have all of this responsibility, but it's really not. It's just a burden.
Yeah. And it was, between Miss Havisham choosing to have Pip be there to train Estella. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, later on when he is given the opportunity to have a higher education and move up in his station in life thanks to the convict that he helped out in the early parts of the book. It, like you said, it became this sort of monster.
Spoilers for Great Expectation, by the way.
I feel like that most. I don't
think anyone cares.
Most of our readers have probably only seen the movie, and the movie has nothing to do with the book. Mm-hmm. His name is Pip, not Finn. There is no artistry. There is no Gwyneth Paltrow nude scene. And
really, God damn it. Movies are the worst.
So anyway, The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yes. Do you want to give me a basic idea of your impressions of this?
Somebody decided that they wanted to both honor and possibly parody the Rankin Bass Christmas specials.
Oh yeah, those claymation musicals.
Yes, and decided to put Tim Burton's fingerprints all over it.
Yep, back when Tim Burton was still new and cool.
And so you got this Hot Topic Goth version of a Christmas special where the Pumpkin King
Jack Skellington
chooses, after a trip, an accidental trip to Christmasland, to co-opt and absorb Christmas as his own holiday.
Oh yeah,
and ruins just about everything.
He basically showed up in Christmas Town, looked around, and said, "I want it. I want it all, and I want it now."
So he tries to take over Christmas. It doesn't work out, and then Santa comes along to save everybody's ass, and the Oogie Boogie Man is a bunch of bugs.
Yeah, that sounds like you got the main points of the movie. Now, are you ready to overthink it?
Well, one of the things that we had in our pre-discussions was that we were going to talk about one of your favorite movies and the evils of capitalism. So I'm sure that's going to come along.
Well, specifically, it's colonialism and cultural appropriation.
Yes.
But there's also a lot of other things I want to get into. I have had a lot of time to overthink this piece of culture. But first, I want to familiarize you with a term.
Okay.
Because I spend most of my time thinking by myself. I end up coming up with terminology that only I understand.
Right.
And one of my private vocabulary words is hedonic reversal.
Okay.
Now, hedonic is having to do with pleasure.
Right.
And hedonic reversal is when you enjoy things that you shouldn't enjoy.
Okay.
It's sort of like masochism, except it's not just about like kinky sex pain. It's also about enjoying going to horror movies or enjoying listening to sad songs.
Or watching The Room.
Or watching The Room, yes. Or just like getting morbidly curious about horrible situations. And as I'm sure you have caught on, hedonic reversal is the basic gist of the culture of Halloween Town.
Mm-hmm.
They love things that are horrible and icky and spooky and dark. And it's really at the heart of like everything in this movie is this tension between wanting what is pleasurable and taking pleasure in things that are the opposite of that.
Right.
I think that like this is something that we all experience in some way. I don't think anyone has ever like seriously believed that a good life is always happiness all the time.
Right.
But on the other hand, there is a lot of variability in how we experience this effect and how much each individual seeks it out. Like there are masochists who like actually enjoy pain. There are people who maybe like a dark joke once in a while, but they're mostly happy people. And I think that like the tension between Halloween Town and Christmas Town is basically between the people who are very low on the scale of hedonic reversal and the people who are very high on the scale of hedonic reversal. They're like, oh yeah, this scary stuff is really great, isn't it? And Christmas Town is like, no, it's not, you freaks.
Yeah.
And what they eventually have to learn is that there's a time and place for both.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some mixing can help with like understanding one another better or like giving your life some healthy variety. But ultimately what you really need is to like keep things separate for the most part, because otherwise you just end up with this bland mishmash of everything at once.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, a little too much, actually. I believe we have discussed this in the past as cultural gentrification.
Yeah. I think that, like, quite often there's this assumption that if a little bit of something is good, then a lot of it is even better. Even 10 or 15 years ago, pumpkin spice was something you got maybe once in a while on Thanksgiving.
Right.
And then, like, Starbucks figured out that you could put it in a latte and it would, and you could make it a seasonal item, and then people would flock to their doors for it. And now it's everywhere. When capitalism gets a hold of Christmas, suddenly you get Christmas everywhere. You get, like, 50-some Hallmark Christmas movies that are all terrible. You get
50.
You get Christmas decorations showing up in stores in October or September, and it's like it's just too much. By the time December rolls around, you're already sick of it.
Right. You know, every show has a Christmas special and everything. There is a Star Wars Christmas special. Just imagine the 70s. Everything that was horrible about the 70s. And then add in about an hour of Chewbacca's family speaking Chewbaccan. Yep.
I can't even
avoid at all costs. So we have Jack Skellington, the Pumpkin King, the King of Halloween.
Yes. He's the scariest guy around.
And he's bored.
He's very bored. Jack is the classic tragic hero archetype.
Mm-hmm.
Classic tragedies. I'm talking ancient Greek classic tragedies are about a guy, usually a guy. It's almost always a guy, because patriarchy, who is at the height of his power. And he's widely regarded as good and pure and powerful, and he'll save us all and all that stuff. But he has this fatal flaw. Classically, the fatal flaw is also the exact same thing that got him into power in the first place. And in Jack's case, I think it's the fact that he's so goddamn good at scaring people.
Mm-hmm.
He is so scary that he does it without even trying. And he talks about that in his I Want song. He talks about how he doesn't even have to try. He can just make grown men tremble with just a wave of his hand. And that's what leads him it's what leads him to be bored in the first place. It's what leads him to feel so overconfident as to think that he can jest Christmas because he wants to.
Right.
And because he probably can't remember the last time he ever failed. We don't know how long he's been dead. We don't know if he remembers any of his life before dying. He's set up to fail by the very things that made him successful in the first place.
So Jack is bored by being the king of Halloween, and he stumbles into Christmas Town.
Yep.
And maybe my favorite song in the entire thing, what's this? Oh my, the trees and snow and happy, and
it's like, and absolutely no one's dead. Yeah, that is one of the best songs, I think. It's just this guy, for the first time in probably as long as he can remember, he has found something new.
Yes.
And something he doesn't understand. And that is like, if you're bored, what you want most is a mystery.
Right.
It's like, this is something that confuses me, and I just will not give up until I figure it out. And so he decides, I want it. I'm going to have it. I have the power. I can do whatever I want. I'm the king of Halloween Town. I'm just going to go back home to Halloween Town and tell the people that we're going to do Christmas.
And the thing about it is, Jack at no point has a conversation with anyone in Christmas Town.
Oh.
He takes a look around Christmas Town. He gets a vague idea of what's going on. He thinks Santa Claus is a giant lobster.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes back home to Halloween Town, and he goes to the mad scientist, and he wants to borrow some stuff so he can do experiments.
On Christmas. He comes home with a bunch of stuff, which is like the classic, like it goes right back to the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, who thought that he could steal Christmas just by taking all of the toys and food and junk, and decorations. Jack thought he could steal Christmas, but not with the same motivations as the Grinch. He didn't want to steal it to keep it from people. He wanted to steal it to have it.
Yes.
And through having it, be able to give it to other people. But he's, like the Grinch, mistaking that Christmassy feeling with the stuff.
Right.
And, again, that's exactly what capitalism does.
I mean, he's boiling
if you can't
candy canes and distilling Christmas ornaments to dust in order to, taste them or something.
I also really love the visual jokes in that particular sequence where he boils the candy cane and it flops over like a noodle instead of dissolving. Puts a holly berry under a microscope and he zooms in on it and breaks the slide.
And in all of this, I'm watching this and I'm just like, why don't you just talk to someone in Christmas Town? And I feel like this is like the major tenet of where this movie makes a comment on cultural appropriation. Is white people will look at a culture and they will see things. They will see headdresses. They will see modes of clothing. They will latch onto certain terminology or a certain aesthetic and just appropriate, just take it for themselves without any idea of the context or why it is, or, why you as a white person probably shouldn't be doing dreadlocks or,
the classic example I can think of is getting a tattoo in a written language you don't understand.
Yes.
and you just trust.
A recent famous example is Ariana Grande's attempt at getting a tattoo that said 7 rings, and it didn't because she got it in a language that she did not understand.
Yep.
Because one of her songs was about 7 rings, being better than LeBron, because she could buy her hair. Which is even deeper into the cultural appropriation territory. And
wow.
Yeah, Ariana Grande really stepped into the cultural appropriation shitstorm.
I really haven't been paying enough attention to her.
That's probably...
Well, actually, I probably have been paying about as much attention to her as she deserves.
Yes. The only reason I know about it was because that was part of my this episode research.
Yeah. I think, but speaking of the tattoo thing, there's only one white person I know who has a Chinese tattoo who is actually justified in having that tattoo because her husband comes from a Chinese family.
Right.
And it's her last name. Her married last name. So, of course, she knows what it means. And, of course, it's something that she can claim because it is her name. But everyone else, just fucking stop.
Yeah, it's a difficult conversation to have with white people.
Yeah.
Because white people don't get it.
Yeah.
And the reason they don't get it is because they did not take the time to talk to someone in Christmastown about what Christmas is.
Yeah. Imagine a version of the story where Jack had been like, wow, this is a whole other holiday that I never knew about. Let me, one leader to another, approach Santa Claus and say, I'm the king of Halloween. You're the king of Christmas. Why don't we form an alliance and see if we can join forces and learn from one another?
And he doesn't do that either. He only sees a shadow of Santa Claus.
That must be the guy in charge. I want to be that.
And he just sees him from a distance, and he thinks he's a lobster, and he believes the name is Sandy Claus, as in...
And he thinks that Santa Claus must be this big, fearsome creature because that's who would be in charge in Halloween Town.
And the thing is, he's not entirely wrong about Santa Claus being an imposing figure. Yeah. He's supposed to be an imposing figure. He's this big, jolly...
He knows if you've been bad or good. He sees you when you're sleeping.
Yes, which is a very Halloween thing. You would think that the conversation between Jack and Santa...
Did you know that he sneaks into children's houses at night?
and those are the kind of things that would appeal to Jack, because you do those things to scare people.
Yeah.
And then you have Santa Claus, who does these things to bring joy to people. And that's the disconnect. Yeah. He sees the ways in which Halloween and Christmas are similar in the potential creepiness factor.
The other thing that both holidays really have in common is the element of surprise.
Yes.
Because surprise, if it's an unpleasant surprise, you could be scared. Ha! But if it's a pleasant surprise, you could be like, ooh, yay! You want to be surprised on Christmas.
Right.
That's why the presents are wrapped up. And Jack understands that when he's telling the other people in Halloween Town, people are asking, well, what's in the present? And he says, that's the point, not to know. And it's like, ooh. And everybody's like, ooh, it must be something really scary in there.
It's like, no, it's supposed to be something nice.
It's like, that sounds suspicious. It must be something scary, right?
And the thing is, Halloween Town, because of the hedonistic reversal, doesn't understand the difference between scary and nice. Yeah. Because what they consider nice...
They like being scared.
...is scary.
Yeah.
So, Jack, having not even bothered to have a single conversation with anyone in Christmas Town about what Christmas is about, decides that he is going to do Christmas himself. Yep. With Halloween Town as his cohorts. Mm-hmm. And he gives everybody a job. Mm-hmm. He has the mad scientist make reindeer. Yep. So reindeer will
I love those reindeer, by the
And
way.
yes.
These big skeletal reindeer with huge bat wings.
And I don't remember what he has the mayor do.
Did you catch on that the mayor has two faces?
Yes.
All right. Because that when I figured out that the politician of this town is literally two-faced, I was like, oh my god, how fucking clever. But also the line, Jack, I'm only a politician. I can't make decisions on my own.
Yeah. And this is the day after Halloween where he goes to Jack's house hoping that Jack will be home and is like, hey, we got 364 days before next Halloween and I got all these plans and we got to get started.
Yep.
And of course Jack is still wandering about in Christmastown at this point.
He's missing. Oh no. So the mayor is just this like hapless like figure who's like nominally in charge, but he doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and he's totally dependent on the true leader of this town, which is Jack. That's another thing I like about Halloween Town. Now, there's no existing mythology that this film draws from in its construction of the mythology of Halloween. Mm-hmm. Whereas Santa Claus is like a huge mythological figure, at least in modern day.
Right.
So there's already plenty of mythology associated with Santa Claus. And Santa Claus stands alone, the king of Christmas. He's got his wife, and he's got his reindeer, and he's got his elves, but they are all subservient to him. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Halloween Town, there are multiple figures that are all powerful in their own way.
Right.
There's Jack. I almost called him Captain Jack. Oh my god. Can you imagine Captain Jack Skellington?
The nightmare before the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh god. Talk about hubris. There's Jack Skellington, but there's also the mayor, who is more of an administrative leader.
Right.
And there's Oogie Boogie, who is sort of a shadowy figure who people know to be afraid of. Mm-hmm. But he really only seems to have power over trick-or-treaters.
Right.
And there's also Dr. Finkelstein, who also has a significant amount of power. And we will get into the problematicness of Finkelstein's power. Because we haven't even talked about Sally yet.
No, we haven't even gotten to Sally yet.
Let's talk about Sally.
So Sally is the... I guess the term would be the Frankenstein's monster.
Finkelstein's monster.
Finkelstein's monster. She is a sewn together reanimated zombie.
Yeah, she's stuffed with autumn leaves, which I always thought was a really amazing detail. So she's Finkelstein's creation. And they have this really bizarre, unbalanced relationship.
Right.
It doesn't whack you over the head with this, but it's essentially an abusive relationship.
Yeah. Finkelstein created Sally to be his slave, essentially.
Yeah. It's a very similar dynamic to like the narcissistic parent who has a child and doesn't want that child to be an independent being, but just wants that child to be an ego boost or an accessory to them.
Right.
So Finkelstein created Sally and created her to be subservient. And Sally doesn't really like that, but because this is the only life she's ever known, she doesn't really feel like she's empowered to leave. Mm-hmm. I've heard people complain about Sally's character, and a lot of times their complaints come down to, why doesn't she just leave? And the answer, of course, is because it's not that simple to just leave your abuser.
Right.
Especially if they have such a tight hold on your like identity, really. Mm-hmm. She doesn't really know who she is outside of his control.
And it's shown in the early parts of the movie that she does not know how to repair herself.
Yeah, she does figure it out.
And that's the thing, is one of the reasons she keeps going back to Finkelstein is because she falls apart. Mm-hmm. And she has not yet figured out how to repair herself, to sew herself back together. Now, Sally, once she learns how to do that, gains a sense of autonomy.
Yeah.
Essentially forces Finkelstein to create himself a new lover.
Yeah.
which is maybe one of the other things we've kind of ignored about Sally because we don't see that part of the relationship. But I was under the impression that Finkelstein created Sally to basically be his fuck doll.
Yeah, which is like when you add that to the like parent-child dynamic, it turns it especially depraved.
Yes.
The fact that this is a Disney movie,
yes,
is like, oh my god, they really got this past the radar.
Yeah.
And honestly I'm glad they did, because like without making it so obvious that it would like trigger people like automatically,
right,
they made a character that people in those kinds of situations could relate to.
Yes.
And see that, hey, maybe there's hope. Maybe I can escape.
But the other part of it is that she does find a level of support in Jack Skellington.
Yes.
He wants her to make his Santa suit.
Yeah.
And she does so begrudgingly, knowing that this is all a bad idea.
Yeah. Because sewing is how she is put together.
Right.
And it's how she learns to repair herself. She like ends up carrying like a needle and thread with her so she can sew herself back together.
Right.
And sewing is how she ends up helping Jack reluctantly with his master plan, because she makes him the Santa suit. So it's like he's adding to her confidence in her own self-sufficiency,
mm-hmm.
at the same time that he's kind of making her complicit in his crimes. But it's like this really bizarre dynamic where sometimes you have to do something that you're not proud of, right, in order to like get to that spot where you can actually feel free to make your own decisions.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other part is she is so used to being dominated and abused, yeah, that when her attempts to reason with Jack, mm-hmm. is he ignores it because, yeah, he's the Pumpkin King, he's the King of Halloween. So of course I can do this.
He is incapable of listening to dissent at that point. He is still in that euphoric state of, I have this new project and I am utterly confident that I can pull it off. All right. I need to do is gather my resources, gather my support, and actually see it through. Mm-hmm. He is never going to be able to hear anyone say, you're making a mistake. And in fact, when she says you're making a mistake, he thinks she means he's making a mistake by asking her to help. So he responds by boosting her confidence. Right. Who else is clever enough to make my Santa suit, you know?
And, you know, in the end, when, you know, to kind of get ahead of ourselves, when Santa is eventually rescued, mm-hmm. it's Sandy that essentially does the heavy lifting in that rescue. And, you know, Santa basically yells at Jack and is like, she's the only one around here with any damn sense.
Yeah. And what do we know about Santa is that he knows who's been bad and who's been good.
Yes.
And he can tell Sally has been good.
Yes.
She has been good this entire time. I find it so fascinating. On the surface, it's like, listen to her, she's got good sense. She can keep you from making similar mistakes in the future. Mm-hmm. But it's also listen to victims of abuse.
Yes.
Which is like, we don't see the scene where Sally tells Jack, or anyone really, about what her life was like with Finkelstein, or all the things that she's been through. But I have to assume that's something that happened off screen at some point.
Yeah.
And who knows if she would have had the confidence to speak up about it if Santa Claus himself hadn't said, listen to her.
And another part about it is listen to women, because she is pretty much the only feminine figure that we see prominentry in Halloween Town. There are some witches.
There are the witches, and there's one of the trick-or-treaters is a girl.
And of course, you know, I mean, they're there, but they're sort of background noise.
Yeah. And although I do think it's great that the I believe Shock is the female trick-or-treater.
Okay.
She is shown to be the cleverest one.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm like, the three trick-or-treaters are Harry, Ron, and Hermione.
Right. So, yes, the trick-or-treaters, the hench people of the Oogie Boogie Man, have been recruited by Jack Skellington to pull off a black op.
Yep. They are going to kidnap the Sandy Claus.
To once again compound on the fact that Jack didn't really take the time to learn anything.
Yeah.
He sends these three to get the Santa Claus, and they go and kidnap the Easter Bunny.
Yep.
And then he has the gall to yell at them and say, which door did you go through? Well, we went through a door. And it's like, no, it's the one shaped like a tree. and at this point in the movie, I kind of wanted to just pull Jack aside and said, did you even talk to a person in Christmastown?
Now, this is something that just occurred to me.
Right.
What we know about people who are in that state of mind that Jack is in, the like overconfident, nothing can go wrong kind of state of mind,
right,
is everyone else must have the same motivations as me. And
which they clearly don't.
And if he was drawn to the Christmas door because it was the most attractive to him in that moment, then everyone else must find that door the most attractive as well. So he wouldn't have to describe it. He'd be like, just find the door and go through it. You'll know it when you see it. Because I did.
Yeah.
Whereas the children are like, if you're a child in the Halloween state of mind, now the Halloween state of mind is get that candy.
Yes. And where are you going to get that candy from? The thing that looks like candy.
Yeah. And yeah, there's candy associated with Christmas, but you know what the other holiday that's most associated with candy for little children is Easter, when you get the big basket full of candy.
And the thing is, the door to Easterland is basically just an Easter egg, which is a round object with a lot of glittery, sparkly, colorful stuff. A kid that does not know what an Easter egg is, but does know what candy is.
Yeah. You could definitely see them thinking, oh, yeah, I want to go through that door.
Oh, yeah. Because that's the candy mother load.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like the Christmas tree, if you don't know what a Christmas tree is, what is this? Vegetables?
Exactly.
It looks like broccoli.
Like broccoli with little marshmallows or something.
Ugh. Awful.
It's like Christmas crunch.
I hate Christmas.
So anyway, we are talking about an almost Christmas movie.
Yeah. Back to Jack and his ill-fated quest to Christmas. He rallies the entire town together to make Christmas. And another of my favorite songs is Making Christmas. Making Christmas, making Christmas. And they're like making toys and treats and stuff like that. And there's this like building sense of foreboding because everybody is like, this is going to be great. We're making such an awesome Christmas. It's going to be the best Christmas ever. And you can see the shit they're making and it's horrifying.
It's Halloween stuff. And because the hedonistic reversal, this is what they know.
Yeah.
You know, fun and games are shrunken heads. And
who wouldn't want an enormous boa constrictor under their tree?
So, yeah, Jack and the town are making Christmas in their own image, which is clearly not Christmas. And Sally, being the only one with any damn sense, has a sort of fog thing. She pours it into a well in an attempt to fog up Christmas too much for Jack to be able to make his trek. And, of course, then Jack's dog Zero... just happens to have a shiny red nose.
The ghost dog, Zero. Dead Pumpkin King, of course, has a dead dog.
So Zero is our anti-Rudolph.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack is able to make his trek into the world to bring Christmas to the children. And boy...
won't they be surprised.
So our first taste of Jack as Santa is he crashes into this one kid's roof and makes his way through the chimney. And the kid is super excited. Oh, wow, I'm going to go and see Santa Claus. And he goes in and he sees this skeleton.
Yeah.
Dressed in a red suit.
Santa's not supposed to be thin.
And Jack gives him a present and creepily slides up the chimney. And the kid's parents come running in. It's like, oh, what did Santa leave you? And the kid opens the present and pulls out a shrunken head. And then we see the people start calling the police because the toys are attacking the children.
Yes. We get like a walking doll that chases the children down the hall. We get my absolute favorite, which is the boa constrictor, which gobbles up the Christmas tree while the child screams nearby. Oh my god. And now, in this universe, Santa's real. Let's just go with it.
Yeah.
So, in this universe, the authorities are like, someone has been impersonating Santa Claus. And it's this terrible crisis, and we don't know what happened to Santa, but we know that there's this imposter spreading fear and terror throughout the town. They try to mount an assault on an aerial assault on this
flying coffin.
Yeah. Yes.
With skeleton reindeer led by a ghost.
Yep. At first, Jack mistakes the cannons with fireworks, and he thinks, they're celebrating. They must think I'm doing a great job. And but then he realizes that they are aiming for him. Sure enough, gets hit and tumbles out of the sky in his darkest hour.
Meanwhile, the trick-or-treaters are told to go and make Santa comfortable. Mm-hmm. And because of our hedonistic reversal, that means we send him to the torture chamber of possibly the most evil thing in Halloween Town, which is saying something.
Yeah, the only creature in Halloween Town who the other Halloweenies are afraid of.
Yes.
And it's widely regarded that Oogie Boogie is the worst Disney villain.
Because there really isn't anything to him.
And I can kind of understand that, because it's kind of a whole town full of Disney villains.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we have to have a villain because it's the 90s. So they make Oogie Boogie into the villain. And his song is not nearly as catchy as the other songs. But he's got this, like, gambling gimmick that
doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah. The basic premise is he likes to play with his food. And
I feel like this movie is very short, too. I think it's barely 80 minutes. And for the most part, it's okay, because the movie doesn't feel like it's overstaying its welcome. But I feel what happened is they cut a lot out of what Oogie Boogie... how would have been, like, they were rushing through Oogie Boogie, and therefore there was a lot that probably should have not been cut, because the movie is barely 80 minutes, you could afford another 10 minutes or so. It feels like that third act is very rushed, and part of that is that Jack is able to realize almost immediately after he shot out of the sky that, oh, I fucked up.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And then the other part was we have this villain that kind of just appears out of nowhere that hasn't been featured at all in this movie other than if he was the shadow on the moon.
Yeah, that's what my impression was, that he was the shadow on the moon. I think Oogie Boogie is the only part of the movie that really doesn't work that well.
Yeah.
I think the stakes would have been just as exciting if they really had just made Santa comfortable.
Because what would comfortable be in Halloween Town? Yeah,
but also, like, could Santa ever be comfortable on Christmas Eve if he's not doing his job?
Right.
That's his whole thing, So, yeah, he would have been just as unhappy. He would have been, like, he's a generous guy. He doesn't, like, he's not concerned about his own well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Just making it so that he can't be Santa on Christmas Eve would be enough of a, like, terrible thing to do to Santa.
Right.
But no, instead they had to put him in mortal peril or something like that.
Because Oogie Boogie had nothing better to do.
I think that they kind of realized in retrospect that this was the part of the movie that doesn't make as much sense. Because in fact, in the Nightmare Revisited, the album of covers the cover of Oogie Boogie's song, which is a really good cover, I think, by Rodrigo y Gabriela,
Okay.
is almost completely instrumental. They only kept 2 spoken word lines, and all the lyrics were taken out.
Okay.
It's got a good tune. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
So I think that was a really good choice for Rodrigo y Gabriela. I want to check them out again now because they did a really good job. And yeah, I think like toning that part down was a good choice.
So Jack is shot out of the sky and immediately realizes that, oh, I screwed up.
I think this is actually the moment when he got what he wanted.
Right.
Think of it. When he was singing his I Want song, Jack's Lament, what he was tired of was being good at everything he tried. All the constant adoration. And, like, he's too good at what he does. And so there's no challenge left in it. So this was the first time, probably the first time he ever that he remembers that he ever failed. And meaningfully is probably the first time in a very, very long time that he's ever felt fear. Because like you can see that he's afraid when he realizes he's being shot at. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine being the king of Halloween and never feeling fear? That's got to be horrible.
Yeah.
So I think that when he has his great fall, I think that's when he got what he wanted. It wasn't when he was doing Christmas. Mm. It was when he failed to do Christmas.
And it fits into the hedonistic reversal.
Mm-hmm. And I think it also explains why, like, he spends a couple of minutes wallowing in self-pity, saying, like, oh, poor old Jack. And then he's like, well, you know what? I did my best, and I gave him some good stories, and now I've got some really good ideas for next Halloween. It's like, he does that flip in just a moment. And I think it's because that's what he needed. He needed to have a moment of fear and a moment of abject failure in order to remember what that's like and feel inspired again.
Along with this revelation, he does realize, oh, I fucked up. I need to fix this.
Yeah.
How do I fix this? I gotta go get Santa Claus.
Yep. Which is also like realizing, oh shit, I need to ask for help from someone who really is an expert at this.
And the first moment in this entire movie where Jack Skellington gets the idea in his head that he should talk to someone from Christmas Town. I know I keep bringing that up, but it's the one thing that really bothered me is it didn't take 5 minutes to like pull aside an elf and be like, what the hell is this?
Hey, I'm new around here. Can you show me around, maybe?
Yeah, that's like...
And you know what? That would have been... Can you imagine how Christmas Town would feel if they had a newcomer who wanted to learn about Christmas? They would be overjoyed. They would love to show this guy what Christmas is all about.
And I feel like that's how, like, white people, when they culturally appropriate, it's like, if you would just take a few minutes to really talk to people in the culture, or immerse yourself in the culture long enough to understand what it is so you can respect it.
Yeah. Do your homework.
The thing is, they don't.
Yeah.
And that's why you have Jack Skellington being shot out of the sky instead of Jack Skellington on Christmas Eve being able to, like, sit in Halloween Town and, Santa just kind of slips him a present and he opens it and it's the scariest thing he's ever seen in his life and everybody's happy. Because
oh yeah, that Santa would know to give the Halloweenies scary presents.
Yes.
Because he just knows what people want. It's his whole thing. So there's this really exciting sequence where Jack faces off against Oogie Boogie and pulls the thread and unravels him, and Oogie Boogie is revealed to be a burlap sack full of bugs. And it seems as though he's been killed. I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't the case, because we don't really know what Oogie Boogie even is.
Yeah. And just kind of to add to that, for some reason, when I saw the part where it was revealed that Oogie Boogie was basically a bunch of bugs in a bag, it reminded me of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Okay, tell me about it.
The comic. In the very first issue of the comic book, the Turtles kill Shredder. Shredder had killed Hamato Yoshi. Splinter was Hamato Yoshi's rat. They all hit the mutagen. And Splinter had spent 13 years training the Turtles to get revenge on Orokusaki for killing Hamato Yoshi. So they do. And that is supposed to be basically the end of the Turtles, except the book was actually popular.
Yeah, you can't kill the main villain and expect to make a good sequel.
So they're like, wow, this thing sold. Oh, we got to make more issues.
Yeah. So
they do, and they introduce Baxter Stockman, and then they have a trip into space. But then the Shredder comes back. The Shredder comes back as a deal with the devil to be reconstituted as a mass of worms that shapeshift into a man. So the Shredder is basically a big old bag of worms.
Well, now that's fascinating. I didn't know that. And suddenly I'm like, I am glad there wasn't a sequel to this movie, though, because that would have been awful.
I feel like, yes, the biggest, easiest way to ruin this outside of over-commercialization is to give it a sequel.
Yeah.
Because there's no way the sequel will have half of what this movie had.
Yeah. Instead, what we got was more awful Tim Burton movies. And honestly, like, what's happened in Tim Burton's career since Nightmare kind of reminds me of Jack Skellington's arc. He got way too good at what he did, and he just kept doing that forever. I kind of wonder if he's ever going to, like, have his great fall and be inspired again. We'll see. Or not. So Jack defeats Oogie Boogie, sets Sally and Sandy Claus free because Sally has been captured in her own attempt to free Santa Claus. But she's just not the Pumpkin King, you know?
Right.
Sandy Claus, like, says his bit about gotta listen to Sally, and then is like, yeah, of course I can save Christmas. I'm Santa, you know?
Right.
And he's just like puts his finger on the side of his nose and flies up into the sky and saves Christmas like you do. And then he gives Halloween Town a snow.
And what's this?
Everybody in Halloween Town is like, suddenly feels that Christmas feeling because the only person who could really show them was Santa.
Right. Something that Jack would have learned had he only spent a few minutes talking to anyone in Christmas Town.
Yeah.
The moral of the story, talk to someone in Christmas Town.
And I think that, like, one of the lessons that he learns is that Christmas can only be given. It cannot be taken.
Right.
And that's also something I think that a lot of people these days need to learn. You can't just decide to have Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that has to come from being, like, in a community. And more than that, in a community that cares about you and your needs.
Yeah.
You can't just tell someone to cheer up, it's Christmas time.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention to their needs and, like, actually help them to have a good Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a way that's like, I'm going to give you the gifts that I would like to receive myself.
Right.
Because everybody's different.
And I feel like we'll get into this more when we go into our Christmas episode, but I know that you have your problems with Christmas, mostly through working retail, and
well, it's not only through working retail. There's also a lot of personal trauma.
and you know, I have some of that on my own. I worked in a bakery for almost 10 years.
Oh, God.
And Christmas was the absolute worst.
Oh, I bet it was.
And
I want it now.
It's not just that you want it now. It's that everybody has their reservations and their pre-orders, and there's only like 2 people in the department. So you have to be able to, you know, we have to be able to do the work of what turns out to be like 5 or 6 people.
Right.
And, you know, I just remember there were days where the day before Christmas Eve, proofing the preparation, everything you got to get out and have ready to proof. You can't even do it on all your racks because you only have 4 racks, and then you have to like go and pull out even more in the morning. So, I mean, I'm there for about 3 hours over my shift just doing that. And then I'm coming in for like 4 or 5 hours early the next day for the shift in order to have the donuts ready for the church that judges you out the ass for not coming to their church on Sunday, but still expects fresh donuts.
Wow.
And I know this because I've known people that go to that church, and I knew their attitude towards it. And it's like, if you're not in church on Sunday, you're, sinning against God, and, you're going to go to hell and whatever else. And bitch, I make the 6 dozen donuts that you give out to your parish on Sunday mornings. You do not pick them up on Saturday. So y'all can go fuck yourself. But, you can't say that to customers because...
Oh, no, you can't. And you also can't say it to your boss. So I have, I only worked at this place for 1 year, so I only experienced 1 Christmas there.
Ugh.
But it was enough.
Yeah.
So my worst job ever was at a lunch counter in an office building. And my boss was into Christmas. So she mandated that... from Thanksgiving to New Year's, I would have to play Christmas music on the radio, the entire lunch 2 hours. This was not negotiable. It was about the kind of atmosphere she wanted to, and I had to do this even if there weren't any customers in the room. And I hated having the radio playing anyway because the radio was closer to me than it was to the customers. So it was affecting my hearing if it was at the volume that they could hear.
Right.
So I was having to ask customers to repeat themselves all the time.
And they hate that?
Yes. And I already have a little bit of audio processing problems, so it was not a good time. Also, she had this attitude, my boss did. I think it was the first day back after Thanksgiving. She said to me, "So what are you asking for Christmas?" And I said, "Nothing." Because I honestly, I'm not especially materialistic. I didn't really want to have a lot of gifts. At the time, I was living with my then partner who had way too much stuff. So I was done with stuff. No more stuff.
Right.
But when I said, "I'm not asking for anything," she turned around looked at me horrified and said, "Are you bah humbug about Christmas?"
Yes. Yes, I am.
And it's because of people like you. So and this wasn't because I'd said anything negative about Christmas. This was just because I said I wasn't asking for presents.
Right.
And that's fucked up. I didn't even say, "Don't get me anything." Mm-hmm. I was just saying, there's nothing in particular that I want. And that was enough to get her hackles up.
Wow. and that just doesn't make sense to me because it's exactly, you didn't say anything bad about Christmas. You didn't slag off about it or anything. Mm-hmm. You were asked a question about what you wanted and you're like, "Yeah, I don't really know." Yeah,
it's and it's that attitude that a lot of people have this attitude that if there's even one thing about Christmas that you aren't 100% on board with, then you must be the devil. And it's I am literally the villain of every single Hallmark movie.
Yeah. That will be another one of our Patreon stretch goals. A Hallmark movie starring Cy Castells.
Be careful what you promise to our viewers.
Oh yeah, but we're gonna need about $3 million for that.
Oh yeah, it'll be a pretty long stretch goal. And remember, if I'm watching it, you're gonna have to watch it too.
Watch it. We're gonna be in it.
Oh my fucking god. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna play the annoying Christian.
Oh god, are you sure you can handle that?
Well, I am a supervillain.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'll show you the true meaning of Christmas if it's the last thing I do.
Okay, I gotta stop the maniacal laugh.
Okay, this might actually be fun. All right.
Remember, that's $3 million. No, what? $5 million.
Okay.
Because I want to be able to sit on some of this money and,
Well, don't tell everybody what you're planning on doing with it now. You don't want to get arrested before.
Oh, no, it's just, you always want it. You always want more money than you actually need for your budget because, you're going to go over budget. That's just the way it works.
Mm-hmm. So is there anything else we want to touch on before we wrap this up?
I don't know. I think we covered just about everything.
Fun story. I actually lost my notes for this episode because it's been so long since I first wrote them. So this morning I just recreated them. Okay. And I just think about this movie so much that I was able to just bang out a couple pages of notes just off the top of my head. So, do you feel like we understand the true meaning of Halloween now?
I think so. Don't ruin Christmas.
The meaning of Halloween is, goddamn, stay in your lane. Keep Halloween in Halloween. Keep Christmas in Christmas. And, Christmas should not creep. That's Halloween's job. Right. Don't get Oogie Boogie involved. And listen to victims. Yeah, I think that just about covers it. And, yeah, even if a piece of media is way too fucking popular for its own good, consider giving it a chance. You're not obligated to, by any means, but sometimes things are popular for a reason. Yeah. And I believe that this is one of them.
I'm Daria Quinn.
I'm Cy Castells.
And thank you for spending your Halloween with us.